So welcome everyone back to our series on intuitive development, how we really tap into that deep inner knowing within ourselves. And each of our live calls are recorded. This portion will be recorded. So those of you who are not able to join us live can tap into that and get the replay. And I do kind of a short teaching and then an experiential process where we tap in. And so today we are going to talk about sort of the elephant in the room, which is when is something our intuition and when is it fear, right? So, or fear or worry, or you could replace anxiety, or you could replace doubt. It could be a lot of words, whatever word seems to work best for you. But these things are present a lot of times when we're receiving information, and we receive information from all over the place. I mean, as a highly sensitive person, we all receive information and we process it more deeply than most people in the world. And so when we're receiving signs and synchronicities and dreams and all of these kinds of things, we're obviously processing that and going, what is the meaning of this? What does this mean for me? Maybe something, gets very, feels very blocked, and we try to do it and do it and do it, and nothing ever comes of it. And we're frustrated. You could substitute frustration rather than fear. But it's just that point where it's like, we just can't make it happen and we just can't see any clarity, versus really receiving something and being an open channel for that. So let's dive in today and we'll talk a little bit about this. And at some point, I'll just ask everyone who's on the call to turn off your videos and we'll go into a visualization and do some work with our body to learn a little bit more about how this arises in different places. So if we talk about fear, right, and this is the number one question that I get asked by intuitive empaths, which is, how can I tell the difference between if this is an aligned intuitive knowing, something that I feel like I should follow, that feels really good for me, and something that feels fear-based, right? And, fear is a primal emotion. It gets activated by the primitive part of our brain and our body to ensure our survival, right? No one likes being in that energy of fear or frustration or feeling blocked or not having clarity. Nobody likes that, right? We don't like being in the energy of fear, but none of us would be here right now if it weren't for fear, because somewhere down the line, our ancestors either ran away from danger or defended themselves or saved their own life by making a sort of reactionary decision in the moment, which allowed them to live on, to procreate, and then voila, here we are, right? And my pat answer about this question, how can I tell the difference between fear and intuition, used to be fear makes your mind and your body contract, like pull in. It feels dense. It feels restrictive, right? And intuition makes your mind and body expand. It feels light and easy and flowing. And this all sounds really good. And I've been talking about this for a long time now. And recently, I've kind of come to understand that maybe I think that's only partially correct. Because sometimes when we receive an intuitive knowing and a nudge, a dream, a vision, we hear something, if we have clear audience, however it comes in for you, it can feel downright scary, right? At one point in my life, I received a nudge that it was time to leave certain relationships that I was in, a certain job that I had done for some time, or move across the United States to a new place where I had no friends or family. And deep down inside, I had a knowing that it was time to make a change. And yet I still had a part of me that was deeply afraid of the unknown, right? So it's like when we get up to this place where intuition comes in and invites us up to an edge or to step beyond an edge, we can feel really nervous about that, right? It may not just be all like harps and angels, right? It may be like, wow, this is really going to shift the trajectory of my life. This is really going to call up from within me different kinds of skills and abilities that I haven't really honed before. And so, there were times even when I still wondered as I looked back in the past, or I was in the moment of that decision, like having regret, like, did I choose the right thing? Did I make the right choice? And I believe really at this point in my life that intuition, which you could call higher wisdom, divine guidance, whatever you like to call that, and fear actually go hand in hand, like they're partners, right? And fear is really the realm of our ego personality, the human part of ourselves that does everything possible to maintain the status quo. And this is our belief that if we keep things the same, if we have what's familiar, we'll survive, we'll survive. And even if those choices are not in our best long-term interests, right? So I've stayed in relationships and jobs and situations for a very, very long time, even though it really wasn't in my best interest, because it felt safe, because it felt familiar, because it felt like stability, even if it wasn't really stability. And so, this fear is going to be present. And again, you can call it whatever you want to, nervousness. You're not sure about the decision, if it's the right one, even if you have a very strong inner knowing, a calling, something's pulling you, something's, all the signs are showing up and people and opportunities are showing up and you're just like, ooh, okay. But this is really stepping me past my edge. And in my opinion, that inner knowing is the realm of the soul, right? The soul. Different people call it different things. I happen to believe that our soul is that part of ourselves, which is sort of like pure energy that goes on, that's infinite, right? And we come into a physical vessel and we assume a personality. And this is my personality in this lifetime. And I know not everyone believes in different lifetimes, and that's perfectly okay. We don't try to tell people in this community what to believe. I'm just sort of providing a perspective here. So the soul is this part of ourselves, which is tuned in continuously to a larger field of consciousness, beyond just our human awareness, beyond what we can just see with our five senses, beyond what we just experience in the physical 3D reality. And this is a compass. Right, it's a compass. It sees the big picture. It's like, okay, here is the trajectory of Bevan's life, and here's what you keep feeling drawn to. I keep feeling drawn to this. Why do I keep feeling drawn to this? Because there's something inside of me, around me, guidance, whatever you want to call it, that is offering me experiences, right? Offering me experiences, offering choice points that will help me to evolve, right? To become as expansive as I can in this lifetime. And those things, those experiences can feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Not always. Sometimes it feels really joyous, but sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And I think that people feel like if they feel any kind of nervousness, fear, overwhelm, unsure, insecurity about, like, I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what to do. That's not an intuitive nudge. It can be both of those things because they're dancing together. And evolution and transformation can be scary. And it also can be really great, so I'm not trying to paint a picture of one way of being. And of course, you're going to have your own experiences. But the unknown can create a vibration of worry within us, and often an attempt to control the outcome, right? So we might receive kind of a general sense of, here's the direction I want to go, or here's a decision that I need to make, or here's an action that feels like it's time for me to take. And yet I want to know how it's all going to work out. And when we don't know how it's all going to work out, of course, that part of ourselves that wants to keep us secure, that wants to have us in that stability, will sometimes hold us back, will sometimes put the brakes on, if you will. And of course, we're powerful manifestors. We're always manifesting something through our thoughts, through our words, through our actions. We're always creating. And yet we are co-creating with almost 8 billion other humans on this planet. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns, right? We can think that we know exactly how it's all going to work out, but it might not. And most of my life, it has not worked out the way that I thought it would. And yet when I got to that point, it was actually better than what I expected. And it doesn't mean there weren't painful moments, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. But, you know, if we expect intuition just to be this beautiful, joyous, absolute knowing, which it can be sometimes, but it won't be always. And I just want to normalize this, right? The reason I'm bringing this forward is because I want to normalize this. We think that if it's not that, if it's not like, yes, this is it, it lights me up and it's perfect and it's exactly what I want, then it's not meant for us. And it's not meant for us. And so these intuitive downloads that you receive, however you receive them, are meant uniquely for you, right? They're your path. They're your opportunities for evolution. And yet every choice that we make also impacts other people. So we're in this dynamic ecosystem of intuitive development. Intuitive development isn't just coming once a month to this class, right? It is an ongoing, everyday, all day long process of learning how to trust ourselves, of learning how we uniquely receive messages. You know, how I receive messages may be very different than you. And so when you find specific vehicles for bringing in those knowings, and you utilize those strengths and you get to understand, what does this feel like when I get a small nudge? Right? When I just get a little small nudge, it could be about something really, you know, would it be maybe seemingly insignificant. Like, here's what I want to eat today. Here's what my body feels like it needs in terms of nutrients, and here's what I desire. Or you get nudges that are really large, life-changing kind of nudges, right? Sometimes there will be fear. Sometimes there will be uncertainty. And sometimes it will feel kind of scary. And sometimes you won't know how to proceed. And sometimes you won't want to. You'll be like, no, I'm not doing it. I've actually received like all kinds of dreams and different things. And I'm like, that's too big. I don't want to do that. That seems like too much work. You know, I don't know what to do. And I've said no, you know, I've said no. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. You know, fear, hesitation, procrastination can actually be beneficial. And it's literally saved my life several times. And it's also a very dense energy. It's difficult to navigate, and it can be painful for us to try to release ourselves out of that cycle of holding back, right? So I look at this like a dance. So if we use this metaphor of a dance, you know, our soul brings forth images or sounds or ideas or imagination, dreams, visions, signs, and synchronicities. And the first part is, are we listening? You know, are we really listening to that? Are we paying attention? You know, because for most of my life, I went through, and I've, you know, of course, been intuitive. I was born this way. But most of my life, I wasn't paying attention. I just thought these things were random. Or I wasn't really watching, or I wasn't really kind of reveling in the incredible way that these synchronicities weave themselves, right? Now, when I see things, sometimes I'll see things like 4 and 5 and 6 times in a day, and it'll be something like a giraffe. And I'm like, where did that come from? A giraffe is like a random thing. I don't live anywhere near where giraffes live. Like, it's just not a coincidence, right? And then I start to look it up, and I start to research the spiritual meaning of giraffe, and I start to tap into the kinds of messages that are coming with that. And I go, wow, this is really interesting. And here's how it relates to this other situation in my life, or a question I've been asking myself. And so when we begin to listen, because the soul is always sending us messages, always sending messages, it starts to outline a pattern of new steps that we can choose if we wish to follow, right? So every dance has its own steps. The waltz has its own steps, and the samba has its own steps. And our intuitive knowing, like a dance, has its own steps as well, its own pattern, right? And then the fear part of ourselves, the part that wants to keep us safe, wants to keep us in what we know, what's familiar, which is omnipresent in our humanness, but it doesn't have to rule our everyday life. It starts to hear the strains of this new music. It starts to observe the steps that the soul is laying out. And it's like, nope, not going there. Now, sometimes it feels really good. And we say, yes, I'm in, I'm going to dance. I feel like this is aligned, so I'm not making a blanket statement here, but sometimes we say, no, it's our first reaction, just to cut it off. I'm not dancing like that. I don't know those steps. I'm not familiar with that music. My body doesn't have any memory of that rhythm. I'll probably look foolish. I'll stumble or even fall down trying this new routine. I don't even know what to do. I'm just going to stand here against the wall and still until the soul stops asking me to dance like this, right? And so begins this dialogue, right? And the practice sessions between the soul and the ego. So the soul's like, I know this is new. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into the studio, the dance studio, and we're going to show up every single day and we're going to practice, right? And the soul keeps beckoning the ego to join them. And sometimes, it takes a while, but the ego will say, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try one small step. And we do feel awkward. And we do stumble sometimes and we do fall down. And then other times we get in and we realize, wow, I'm just really good at this. And I can automatically do this dance. Like I must have known about this before. Like it just feels natural. But other times it's more difficult, right? And I just want to, again, normalize that intuition is not just one blanket way that it comes in, and then how we integrate it can look like lots of different things. But if we continue to practice dancing between the soul and the ego, the steps become easier, more familiar, and our body sort of naturally begins to sway to the rhythm of the new tune. And maybe eventually we begin to enjoy this dance. We stop feeling so much like a novice and we gain confidence. And we begin to flow and we have the ability to improvise. We add our own unique flavor. We add a little special step in there that's just for us. And then over time, fear stops trying to lead the dance or shut down the dance. And ego begins to follow soul. And we begin to trust that every time a new piece of music and new steps show up for us, that we carry forward the embodiment from what we've learned before. So there might always be some kind of tension point, right? A moment of hesitation when it's time to learn the new dance. And yet we realize I'm familiar with this process. This is not my first time. It's not my first performance. It's not my first dress rehearsal, right? I can learn this new thing. I can start this new job. I can move to this new place. I can enter a new relationship or leave a relationship. I've done this before, right? And this is really, really empowering when we get to this place where when we receive small or large intuitive nudges, we can say, this is that thing. This is what happened 3 months ago, last year, 5 years ago. Okay, I'm in, right? We can start to reduce the time in fear. We start to lessen the impact of the uncertainty. And we're more masterful at recognizing what we need to successfully move through the changing seasons of our lives. And we might even be able to laugh a bit at our awkwardness and not take everything so seriously. This has been part of my journey. Well, that was really awkward. It was kind of silly. And to not get so caught up in, gosh, it's either, if it's a life or death situation, that's something different. But fear can make us feel like it is when it's actually not. Right. So we learn how to soothe this inner fear response. And in just a moment, I'm going to take you through an exercise where we tap into what's going on in your energy field. And we really connect in with this dance between ego and soul. And we want to acknowledge fear's presence or hesitation or frustration you know, no, I'm not doing that. We want to acknowledge that that's there because it's real and it's a part of our experience, but we're not permitting it to lead the dance of our lives. We want to live more in harmony with these two parts of self. And really fear like lives in this moment, like this is a danger right now. And we have to be safe. So that either means I'm going to reject it, I'm going to criticize it, I'm going to not do it, I'm going to hold back, I'm going to, you know, make reasons why it can't happen. And then we have this other part of ourselves that holds the vision for our greatness. And it stirs us to new heights of awareness and new lived experiences, because that's why we came here, is to have a full spectrum life, right? You know, we're meant at whatever capacity for each person to not be just sitting on the sidelines, but to be an active, conscious participant, to be choosing experiences which nurture us and expand us, right? So while we think that like dancing with the soul by itself would be so much easier, like what if I could just dance with my soul, this part that knows, this part that's my divinity? Fear is an important partner because it invites us to pause and reflect and consider lots of different possibilities, and it might perhaps actually ensure our safety. And dancing solo with the fear doesn't really work well either. And it usually keeps us standing against the wall, a passive observer of the dance of life instead of an active participant. It tells us all the reasons we can't, when perhaps we actually can, right? We actually can. And so what I invite us to do is blend these two energies. Invite the soul to lead the dance, to have the vision. Acknowledge when the ego comes into fear or frustration or hesitation or procrastination and say, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to take it bit by bit, small, tiny steps. I'm not going to try to do the whole thing at once. Matter of fact, we can't even see the whole thing at once. So it's okay. We don't have to. This is the normal, right? It's normal that we can't see the whole path. And so blending these two energies, they continue to rehearse, right, until the day of the performance. Now, it might not be just a day, it could be a moment, it could be a year, it could be 10 years of your life, the performance, right? I mean, our entire life is sort of that. But when we're at the curtain call, right, where all the actors come out on the stage and the performers, and they take a bow and we receive applause externally, and most importantly, give ourselves applause inside, right? Like, wow, you have really worked hard on this. You've worked hard to release this fear of this change. You've worked really hard to integrate these new relationships, new job positions, new career direction, new health, you know, initiatives, whatever that is in your life. You've worked so hard, Bevan, to do that. And I'm really proud of you, right? We need to take a bow and be proud of this journey of integration. You know, because the fear is a natural partner, right? And the fear and the intuition complement each other. And we can learn how to use each of them in their greatest strength, right? So we call on fear when we need to ask, is this a good situation for me? Is this the right place for me to be? Because sometimes intuition comes in to tell us this is not the right thing for you. And sometimes intuition comes in to tell us this is exactly the right thing for you. And listening and dancing and integrating and experiencing which one is which and which one is the other is a very personal journey for each of us. And so now I want to invite everyone who's on the call and also everyone who is listening to this replay to just get yourselves settled in. We're going to do a short exercise to really tap into these various parts of ourselves, right? These various parts of ourselves. And we're going to use the body as a powerful antenna for our knowing, right? For our knowing. So just take a moment just to sit back and get comfortable. I've got my blanket here and my nice cup of water. And I'm just allowing the breath to come in and out in whatever rhythm it wishes to take. And I ask you to take your right hand and just place it on your belly, like right below your belly button, right? Just place it there on your body. Just sensing in to whatever is emerging in your belly right now. You can even ask it, what message would you like me to receive? And then lean forward just a little bit and move your right hand to your lower back, the back side of your belly. Just feeling that touch, that contact. Noticing what's happening in this lower back area. Asking for any messages to come forward that you need to receive. Now just release and put your hand in a neutral position. And now let's take your left hand and place it right here on the external part of your third eye. Now we're tapping into the combination of intellectual and intuitive mind. Just feeling that skin to skin contact. And listening for any messages that wish to arise. And now move your left hand to the place where your spine attaches to your skull. Right? Just feeling that connection. And listening for any information that comes to you here. Now keeping your left hand in place, put your right hand again on your lower back. Feeling the connection between your cranial at the top and your sacral at the bottom. The channel that runs between these 2 points. Just noticing that channel of energy, which runs up and down your spine. Maybe tapping into how wide is it? How strong is it? Are there any places along the way between these 2 points, the cranial at the top and the sacral at the bottom, that are thinner or even non-existent or twisted in some way? Just noticing this channel of energy. Now move your left hand back to the front of your third eye. Make that contact again. And move your right hand back to your belly. And tapping into the channel that runs between the front of your cranial sacral channel. What are you noticing here? The energy in between. Now you can remove both of your hands, maybe just kind of shake out the energy, shift your body a little bit. And if you would like to record anything that you received, if you like to draw, write, make some notes for yourself, please take a few minutes to do this, to listen in and to observe the intuitive messages that arose for you.